First Samuel chapter 2. First Samuel chapter 2, we are going to cover the first 11 verses. I was considering kind of doing Samuel like I did Genesis, just trying to cover a chapter each service. But, every single text is different. And some texts we want to speed up in, some texts we want to slow down in. And for this particular text, we're only going to cover her prayer because it is so jam-packed full of information. I think it'd be a disservice just to kind of read through it skimpily, if that's a word. I may have created a new word. But let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for being our God. And we thank you, Lord, for your faithfulness. And we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your mercy and for your grace. We thank you that you allow us to gather together to join in your presence, Lord, in fellowship. And we pray, Father, that as we get into your word tonight, that your Holy Spirit would move in a mighty way in each of our hearts. You'd move in the hearts of those who are able to join us online. And Lord, that you would cut away in us the things that don't belong there. Remove those things and fill us with you and your presence and with the things that should be there, Father. I thank you for these hungry hearts that are here this evening. I thank you for those who join us online. And would you just feed us in a most unique and beautiful way. In Jesus' name we pray. In some 1 Samuel chapter 2, we're going to cover the first 11 verses. There have been moments in my life where I've cried out to God for help. And it's been a genuine cry, a cry for bills that are due, a cry for the hurts of life, for things that have happened without, me fully understanding. A cry for a worship team. I cried for that for a long time. A cry for a building God has provided, and we're crying for a bigger building. And there are times in the prayer life where we cry out to God for our needs to be met. And those cries are important cries. And that's part of prayer, yeah? And that's part of prayer, is when we cry out to God to have our needs met. In other moments, I've cried out in great sorrows. I've cried out for peace and for healing and for understanding. When I lost my son, I cried for many of those things, for peace, healing, and understanding. Not knowing, not understanding, not fully comprehending why things are happening the way they're happening. I cried out in great agony when I was excommunicated back in 2013. That was a hard time in my life. I didn't understand. And I cried out to God, and as I prayed, I cried out just for peace, for healing, for understanding. And in times where I've been slandered and people have said things about me that aren't true, and I want to defend myself, I've cried out to God and asked God to be my defense. Because it's not worth me trying to defend myself sometimes. It's just, if people have questions, they can always ask me. Otherwise, Lord, you be my fighter. You go before me, Lord, and you conquer every enemy that stands before me. And there have been other moments in my life where I've cried out to God with great joy and in praise. I think of when I got married, I cried out to God with praise and joy in my heart, and I just lifted up my voice and not necessarily wept. I'm getting biblical if I say that, but I just praised God in prayer and in my heart full of joy. At the birth of my son Ezekiel, I praised God in the most magnificent way. We tried for so long, and when God finally gave us him, I cried out to God and just praised him for what he did and for what he's done. When God filled this fellowship, when God, what he's doing in this fellowship, I praise God constantly in my prayers, thanking him for each person that comes in. And I pray for you guys, and I just ask that God would continue to flourish this place. And I say that because oftentimes when we think of prayer, we just think of the first thing that I mentioned. We think of prayer as asking God for our needs to be met. And for many Christians, that's all prayer ever becomes. And we treat God like a personal genie that we come to when we need something. And that's the only time we show up to pray is, God, gimme, gimme, gimme. Gimme, God, gimme, gimme, gimme. God, please gimme, gimme. Our Father, gimme, gimme. And then when I need more, just gimme, gimme, gimme. And oftentimes God is treated in that fashion, and that's not okay. Prayer isn't just asking God for things. It's also for worship and for praise. And it's also to empty oneself out, not even asking for necessarily anything as far as physical, just asking God, nothing. Lord, I need you. Here am I, a broken man. I got nothing to give. I got nothing to offer. I have nothing. Here am I, Lord, a broken man, a broken woman. Other times it's for great joy, praising God just for what he's done in your life. And those are all acceptable prayers. We saw last week Hannah made a vow. She made a vow to God that if God would bless her with a son, she would give him back to the Lord. Why is that significant? Significant? Do you guys remember? Because Hannah was barren. She had no children. Her husband had another wife also, Peninnah. Peninnah was very fruitful. It's very likely that Elkanah, who was her husband, married Hannah first. And it's likely that he took on Peninnah as a wife because Hannah wasn't unable to bear. Remember, the same thing kind of happened with Sarah and Abraham. And when Hagar was able to bear, Hagar looked at Sarah in a belittling fashion, and that caused a really big rift in tension between Sarah and her handmaid Hagar. This was a common practice in these cultures. And so it's very likely that Hannah was the original wife. It doesn't say she was, but it's very likely. And it's very likely that Elkanah then took on Peninnah because Hannah wasn't unable to bear. And she cried out to the Lord, "Oh Lord, please bless me with a son. Please. Give me a son, God, and I'll give him back to you." Was her vow. And we saw that God granted her petition, and God blessed her with a son, and she named him Samuel. And after he was weaned, do you guys remember what age weaning stopped? Between 3 and 5. There wasn't an exact, just anywhere between 3 and 5. It's when the baby was done suckling, being on the breast. You know, in our culture we say, "Get off the chi-chi." Some people never leave the chi-chi. They're there for her life. 34 years old, still on the chi-chi, And that's just a New Mexican thing. You can laugh all you can do. That's our culture, It's okay. It's not okay if you're on the chi-chi, but it's okay to say it and make fun of it, But, if it's your wife, if you're married, then it's okay. If you're a kid on the mama, it's not okay. But, we're adults. It's okay. Huh? Leeching on mama financially or taking advantage. And that's what it means to be on the chi-chi, so to speak. But I totally forgot what I was talking about. God granted her son. And when he was done being weaned, which is when they got off of the breast for the milk, that's when the weaning process was completed, between 3 and 5. We saw that she offered up a bull that was 3 years old. And it's likely that when he was born, this bull was set aside for this offering. So it's likely that he's 3. Doesn't mean he is, it's likely though. And we see that she goes to the temple and she offers this boy up, not as a sacrifice, but she gives him over to Eli the priest and says, "I've made this vow and I'm honoring this vow. Here you go." And then it says she worshipped. And today we're going to get a little peek into that worship, and we're going to see that this woman was solid. Now, it doesn't say that the Spirit of God came upon her, but I would be absolutely shocked if that wasn't the case, because this praise that we're going to see her send up, man, it is poetic and prophetic in nature. Doesn't mean it is prophecy, but it is very prophetic in the way it's structured, and it's a very Hebrew poetical format. And it is a beautiful, beautiful prayer that's offered up, and it's full of a bunch of rich knowledge. The things that she says are advanced. These are things that theologians debate over, and things that theologians really, execute in their studies, that they look into. And so what she offers up really is incredible. But God granted her petition, and we saw she kept her vow. So we're going to see that she does all 3. She prays to God in sorrow, broken woman. She asks God for something in a petition, and then we're going to see she's going to praise God in worship. And all 3 are prayers that she offers up. Now, it starts in chapter 2, verse 1. Then Hannah prayed and said, "My heart exalts in Yahweh. My horn is exalted in Yahweh." I'm going to stop there right away. It says that Hannah prayed. The question that we should ask ourselves is, what is prayer? We talk about praying as Christians a lot. It's something that's constantly spoken about. We go to seminars about prayer. We read books about prayer. We pray about prayer. God, help me to pray more. But so many Christians don't really know what prayer is. Can anybody in here tell me what prayer is? That's it. It's talking to God. It's no special formatted thing. It's just you opening your heart and talking to God. That's it. You don't even have to use your actual words when you pray. You can pray inside your mind. You could use your words. I prefer to use my words because it makes me feel like I'm talking to somebody. Sometimes I don't. If I'm in a room full of people, it's just a mental interaction between me and God. And if, it's me and the Lord, I'll be talking to him like I'm talking right now. I'll talk to him like he's a person that's there, because he's a person that's there. He's really there. And so I talk to him like he is, because he is. And that's all prayer is. It's you talking to the Lord. No special thing. A lot of people wonder, well, how do I pray like them? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. If you've ever heard somebody put out this immaculate prayer, this, Magnificat, kind of like Mary did in Luke chapter, 1 or 2? A lot of times those are superficial. I remember when I was in the school of ministry, there was a pastor there, and he's a cool guy. I really liked him as a person. He's a great dude, cool pastor. I used to hate when he'd pray, though. It was just so superficial. And maybe he meant it in his heart, but just the way it came off was like, oh Lord, almighty, magnificent King of kings, powerful, hand stretched across the skies in great strength and might. And oh Lord, you are incredible. And he would just go on and on and on with all these adjectives about God. And it was like, at first it's like, wow. And then after some time it's like, man, shut up. Just get to the point. Like, get to the point, bro. Like, we don't need to hear. That should be a very private interaction between you and God. If you pray like that, that's fine. Do that in your closet. Do that at your bedside. Do that while you're driving down the road. And when it's you and God, do that. When she has a meeting to go to, unless she canceled it, but she's supposed to be showing a house here at 7. So she'll probably bounce and come back. But when you're praying in public, they should be short and sweet. If it's more than a minute, you're probably doing something wrong. When you're by yourself, pray for hours. Were you here this morning? What did I talk about? No, I wasn't. It was in the pre-service. Sorry. I do 4 services on Sunday. That's a lot. So my mind gets a little scrambled. In the pre-service, so I guess I'll talk to you guys about it now. Do you know why people don't pray? No. It's hard work. Prayer is hard. Have you ever actually spent an hour in prayer? Have you ever just got on your face for an hour and talked to God? Or sat there in a chair for an hour, an uninterrupted hour, just you and the Lord, 2-3 hours even. It is mentally straining, and it is difficult. I mean, a lot of people, a good prayer session is like 5 or 10 minutes. Whew, man, that was good. Try an hour. Try it. One of these days, I kid you, just get in your closet, get in your room, whatever it does. Show up on a Saturday morning, and it's only half an hour. Goes by like that. If you're actually praying. But it's hard. I used to do it for an hour for our prayer services, and as Ezekiel gets older, the only reason we do it for a half hour, I'll tell you why. Because nobody was ever showing up, and so I was like, why am I waking up my son earlier than I have to get here to show up? And it was me and God praying, but I was like, I'll just do half an hour prayer services. And so as he gets a little older, I'm going to start waking him up at 8:45, and we're going to get here at 9 and pray from 9 to 10. I used to do that all the time. I used to love it. But it's hard. It's hard because you're distracted by all kinds of things. Your mind wanders off in a million different directions, and it's hard to sit there and focus and put your mind where it needs to be and pray and pray and pray. Prayer is not easy. Why do you think when Jesus would pray, he would go off alone and he would go pray in the middle of the night? Why wouldn't he go do it in the middle of the day? It's hard work, and if people are around him, it's going to be really difficult. That's why even when his last prayer session between him and his Father, he took his disciples with him, 3 of them. But he didn't even pray with them. He left them at one spot, and he went off a stone's throw away to go pray alone. And it says he was sweating blood, and he was just in agony because of the nature of what was about to take place and the prayers he was offering up. It was tough. It's work. A lot of people don't pray because it's hard. It's the same reason a lot of people don't do expository teaching. It's because they're lazy. It's hard. It's not easy. I mean, even if you're smart, it's just not easy. It takes time to put together a teaching, to actually sit down and expound the context and really get into what is the nature of the text, what's being said, what did it mean for the hearers, how did the writer intend it to be meant, what's the construction of the original language. You're going to see here in a moment. It's really important understanding, to a degree, Hebrew and Greek. You saw why this morning, and we're going to see that the structure of one of these Hebrew sentences has been not mistranslated, but there's a better translation, and I don't know why the English translators fail to see that. I'm able to read Hebrew. I don't understand everything that it says, but I can read it, and I can say this is what it's supposed to say. And so, but you'll see that in a moment. But why don't we pray? Because prayer is hard. So we talk about it and we read books about it. But very few of us actually get on our face or walk around, however you pray, and actually spend time praying. Hannah offered up prayer. That's what prayer is. After years of being barren, God opens her womb. Full of joy after dedicating her son to God, leaving him in the temple with Eli, she comes out with this incredible prayer of worship. Again, verse 1 in 1 Samuel chapter 2, that Hannah prayed and said, my heart exalts in the Lord. Or if it's all capital, L-O-R-D, what is it? In Yahweh. And we say Yahweh when we come across this because in the original language, that's what it says. I don't like the idea of replacing God's name. I get why they did it. I'm not going to go over the history of that right now. We'll do that another time. But essentially, it was replaced by scribes so that those who would read on the scriptures, they wouldn't take God's name in vain. So they wouldn't say it nonchalantly. So they intertwined Yahweh with the consonants of Adonai and created this new kind of word, which was still Yahweh. But when they saw it and they saw this mutation of it, they wouldn't say Yahweh. They would say Adonai or the name or the Hashem, things like that. We say Yahweh because that's what's there. So she says, my heart exalts in Yahweh. The word exalt literally means to be lifted up, to rejoice in, or to praise. My heart praises Yahweh. It lifts him on high. The heart. When we think of the heart, we think of that beating muscle in our chest. And so for Valentine's Day, we cut out cute little hearts. And I love you, here's my heart. And the reality is if you gave somebody your heart, it'd be nasty. Because it's this disgusting looking muscle. It's all full of veins and got arteries sticking out and stuff. And the anatomical heart is not a pretty picture. I don't know why we do that, but we do, But in ancient times, the heart wasn't this place of emotion. The heart was a place of thought. It was the seat of thought. We used to believe this is where you think, with my chest. This is it. We now understand that this isn't the seat of thought. It's this. It's the mind. And so when you see the word heart in Scripture, it's typically referring to your mind. So she says, I exalt with my whole mind. My whole mind exalts Yahweh. And when we think of mind, think intellect. I exalt God with my intellect. It's something that's purposeful. It's not a feeling-based worship. It's a very purposeful, intellectual worship. If our worship is only feeling-based, that's dangerous. What happens if you're just not feeling it? You ever sat in a worship service and you just ain't feeling it? Oh, last week was good, but I'm not feeling it this week. Well, you worship God with your intellect, not with your emotions. So you get off your butt and you worship him because he's worthy of praise, honor, and worship. And that's why, not because I don't feel like coming to church a bunch of times. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't feel like being here. I want to go home. And I know I can't, because, I'm the pastor, that would turn out odd, I'll just throw Kurt up here and have him do a bunch of worship and, but... No, but it doesn't matter how you feel. We worship God with our intellect. And we do according to what's right and what his word says. Not according to how you feel. Why do you think the enemy attacks so hard between services or before services? Before you're going to do any kind of ministry, you can always expect an attack. There's a couple young girls that are coming here, and in particular, they always get attacked before the ministries or before the services. The services. And I tell them, look, man, this is classic enemy 101. If he can get you out of your emotions and get your emotions up, then he can keep you away from the services. Because a lot of us worship with our emotion and not with our intellect. Because we've been taught to worship with our emotion. We worship God with all our heart. But for us, heart means something different. Heart for us means feelings, not mind. And so as long as we're feeling it, and then once we're not feeling the pastor, once we're not feeling the worship, once we're just not feeling it, what do we do as Christians usually? We go find another church where we'll feel it there. And then you feel it for a minute until you ain't feeling it anymore. And then I'm going to go find another church and then we say it's the Spirit of God. The Spirit's in this place, and then it's not. Or he's not. Oh, the Spirit, he's over there, and then he's not. No, the Spirit is where his body is. The Spirit of God is in here because we're believers that have gathered together to worship the Lord. If you ain't feeling it, you have an issue going on. And that's okay. That's a tactic from the enemy. Get your feelings out of the way, put your intellect into gear, and worship God because he's worthy, not because you feel like it. And then typically what happens is you walk out feeling refreshed, rejuvenated, and like, man, I needed that. Just get out of your own way. Hannah says, my heart or my mind, my intellect exalts. It praises Yahweh. My horn is exalted in Yahweh. Now, horn, it's not that Hannah's not a unicorn. She didn't have some horn sticking out her forehead or some horn on her back. Or in the biblical literature, the horn is a symbol of strength. And so, like, have you ever read the book of Revelation? And God has 7 eyes and 7 horns. Oh, he's a weird-looking beast. No, though that's pictorial. Does anybody know what the number 7 represents in Scripture? Completion. 6 is man. 3 is perfection. 7 is the number of completion. And so when it says God has 7 eyes, he has perfect sight, meaning he misses nothing. He has perfect intellect is the idea. He sees everything. When it says he has 7 horns, what do you suppose that means? His strength is perfect. It's complete. It lacks nothing. That's the idea behind 7. But so the horn is strength. He's got perfect, complete strength. It lacks nothing. There's nothing he can do. There's nothing he can't do. And so when we see horn in Scripture, it's representative or it's pictorial of strength. She says, my strength is exalted in Yahweh. My mouth speaks boldly against my enemies. When it says my mouth speaks boldly, that word boldly in the Hebrew literally means to smile. And if you have a New King James, it'll even say, my mouth smiles at my enemies. But the New King James has the right idea. They just have the wrong conclusion. It doesn't mean that you just, I'm pretty, I'm going to smile at my enemies. No, that's not what it means. The idea is you speak boldly. You smile as you speak. Has somebody ever done something to you or said something and you just smile back, oh, you poor stupid person. I love you so much. You're so sweet. Bless your soul. That's the idea, is you speak back, but with a smile. And it's not to be antagonistic. It's because what she says here. Because I rejoice in your salvation. That's why. Because I rejoice in your salvation. So when she says she speaks boldly, in the Hebrew, it's the Hebrew word rachab. And rahab means to grow wide or to enlarge. It's that smile, but it's not just to smile, it's to speak with that smile. Because she rejoices in God's salvation. Her rejoicing in the Lord is a smile in the face to those who stand against her. And when people stand against you, the greatest thing you can do for them or against them is to rejoice in the Lord. To rejoice in what he has done and what he is doing. And it's like smiling at them saying, oh, bless your soul. We love you and we're going to pray for you. You don't need me to tell you. Now, what I find absolutely beautiful here is when it says, I rejoice in your salvation. Can anybody throw a gander at what that word salvation means? Someone? Hey, how are you doing? Come on in. You are. We start technically at 6, but we started at 6:10, 6:15. I don't know what time we started, but we're in 1 Samuel chapter 2. We're going to cover the first 11 verses, but we're still in verse 1. So you got plenty of food to be fed. And then we have Frito pies too. So food for the mind and soul and food for the belly. But can anybody take a gander at what that word salvation means? Or what the Hebrew word is? It's the Hebrew word Yeshua. That's that word right there. When she says, because I rejoice in your salvation, it literally says, because I rejoice in Yeshua. I rejoice in Jesus. That is so cool, right? She rejoices in salvation. Yeshua literally means Yahweh is salvation. A lot of translators just say salvation, but I believe it's more properly Yahweh is salvation. That's what Yeshua means, or Yehoshua. Yahweh is salvation. Like Hannah, when we choose to praise God in salvation in the face of our enemies, we simply just rejoice in Jesus in counter to what they say or what they do against us. We just smile. We're just going to love Jesus. That's what we're going to do. We're going to rejoice in the salvation. You say what you need to say, and we love you. We'll pray for you. We're going to rejoice in Jesus. I love that. That's a great little principle there. Verse 2 says, there is no one holy like Yahweh. Indeed, there is no one besides you, nor is there any rock like our God. Now here we see the Hebrew poetry jump right off of the scriptures into our face. Hebrew poetry often has repetitive parallelisms, and the way it rhymes, it doesn't rhyme like we rhyme. We rhyme like fish, dish, stitch, rich, pitch, snitch. You know, that's how we do our musical cadences, and we make them rhyming the words. Hebrew rhymes thought, and it parallels thoughts, either negative or positive. And in this case, she brings three positive aspects that represents the rhyme. There is no one like God. What was she saying in verse 2? There is no one holy like God. Indeed, there is no one besides you, nor is there any rock like our God. She says the same thing three different ways. And that's the way Hebrews would often rhyme. They would rhyme the thought. And so she's saying, in essence, God is one of a kind. There is none like him, and he's the only one. I love that. I love that because she establishes that Ichad, that one God. There's no other. She doesn't worship. And in this time, mind you, there were lots of false gods. And it was easy to pick from the gods. And we talked about the opening last week. The children of Israel would go through these cycles of worshiping false gods and disobeying God, and then having a judge rise up. And it was just this constant circle. They would constantly just... And at a time when you could worship a plethora of gods, she says, no, there is one God. And there is none like our God, and he's the only one holy as he is. In verse 3... it gets very prophetic in the way she speaks. And she pronounces a warning to the arrogant-hearted, to the arrogant-minded. In verse 3 it says, boast no more so very proudly. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth, for Yahweh is a God of knowledge, and with him actions are weighed. Now I imagine that Hannah has her rival Peninnah at mind. Why do you think she has Peninnah at the forefront of her mind as she says this? Because Peninnah used to belittle and be condescending to her when she would speak to her, and she would torment her. Remember, she would talk all kinds of nonsense and basically, you're barren. I got the kids. What do you have to offer him? And remember, her soul was vexed. It said it was perplexed that she wouldn't even eat anymore. She just, I don't want the food. I'm just so depressed. And she torments me with her words. So it's likely that she has this at the forefront of her mind. She says, don't boast, or boast no more so very proudly. This word proudly is the Hebrew word gaboa, and it means haughtily, to look on or to speak as superior and with disdain. So it's more than just being proud at heart. It's to look and to belittle somebody. You ever known somebody like that, where they're so full of pride that they look at you like you're beneath them? I've known a lot of people like that. Somebody very particular in mind that looks at people as beneath them. They're very humble in the way they say it, though. And that makes it twice as condescending. It's like, and it's like, she says, don't be that. Boast no more so very proudly. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth. Again, there's that Hebrew poetry taking place. That word arrogance is the Hebrew word atak. And it means to be bold or to be brave. Don't be condescending in this brave tone. With an arrogance. You know how it is when people flaunt their arrogance in a bold manner. There's people who are arrogant and they do it in a way that's like, meh. And then there are people who are arrogant and it's in your face arrogant. She says, don't be like that. For Yahweh is a God of knowledge, and with him actions are weighed. She says Yahweh is a God of knowledge. God sees all things. Pride cannot be hidden from God. As a matter of fact, nothing can be hidden from God. I know we're smooth. We got it all together. We can hide things from God, right? It's what we think. But we can't. We think we can. We all think we're smooth. I'm a smooth criminal. We're not that smooth. I was talking to you guys, some people earlier, and I was telling them, it's funny when people cheat because they think they're so smooth. They think they're all sly, and man, everybody sees what you're doing. You think you look all smooth and slick and slime. You just look stupid. It's funny. Like it's not funny because you shouldn't do that, but it's funny to watch. It's like kids. You know when kids are up to no good, and it's like, dude, like what are you doing? Like you just stop. Is that really your excuse? Is that what you're gonna give me? Is that it? Like really? Do I have to bust you now? But it's funny watching kids because adults are the same way. When we're doing things we shouldn't be doing, it's obvious to everybody watching on, and we think we look so smooth about it. Like nobody saw me. Everybody sees you. We're just not saying anything because we don't. You look so dumb. We don't know what to say. You know, it's almost embarrassing to address it. You know, but God sees everything, and it's funny when we think we can hide things from God. It's funny. You know the crazy thing about God's omnipresence? Do you know what have you ever really thought about what omnipresence is? It means he's everywhere, always. There is no place you can flee from him. This is Psalm 19. Psalm 19. David talks about his omnipresence. He says, where can I flee from God? If I go to this place, you're there. If I go there, behold, there you are too. If I go to the highest heavens, you're there. If I go to Sheol, or in some translations it says, if I were to go to hell, behold, there you are. Where can I flee from God? Omnipresence is a big theological word that we often really don't consider. He's everywhere always. And now I'm going to expand your mind a little bit more. He's not just everywhere always. He's everywhere always on the linear and on the vertical timeline. What does that mean? It means he's everywhere always right now in real time, as well as past and future. I don't even know how that works. That's because God is that big and that he transcends his creation that much. That's big. That makes me feel so puny. And where can I go? What can I do to flee from God? Nothing. You ever been doing something you shouldn't have been doing, and then you feel like you're being watched? You are being watched. You really are being watched. That's probably why you get that feeling, because you really are being watched. That should make you feel really uncomfortable or full of joy. It depends on what you're doing. You know, like if you're up to no good, then, you know, there you go. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, well then, okay. But pride can't be hidden from God. Now this is that constructed verse I was telling you about. When she says, do not let arrogance come out of your mouth. I'm going to go a little for right here. For Yahweh is a God of knowledge, and with him actions are weighed. That's not a good English rendition. And I've looked at several translations, and even though the NASB is a phenomenal translation, I believe that they could have better translated this verse. Because the Hebrew reads it like this. El davat Yahweh vulo natakanu alalut. And it literally says, God's knowledge, Yahweh's actions are not weighed. In God's knowledge, actions are not weighed. That's literally what it says. What does that mean? It means God knows everything. And every judgment that he makes is just, and it's not in need of scales. Because the idea of scales was to make sure that the balance was correct. God doesn't need scales because his knowledge is perfect. That's the idea. So it literally reads, God's knowledge, in God's knowledge, Yahweh's actions are not weighed. That's how it should read. And yes, I confirmed it in Hebrew. I went back and I read El davat Yahweh vulo natakanu alalut. That's the Hebrew. And that valo means no. Natakanu means actions weighed. Or actions, and then alalut is to weigh. They're not weighed. So that verse should literally say, God, in God's knowledge, Yahweh's actions are not weighed. Because again, the idea behind weighing is you put things on the scale to make sure that everything's even. Right? That's what they used to, everything was weighed with the scales, because some people would do things like they'd cover a rock in gold. Or they'd do certain things, or they'd make things look bigger than they are when they're hollow. And so if you put it on the scales to make sure that the weights were correct. And you'd either be able to dupe somebody or not based on the scales. And so you would weigh certain things, and we still do that today. I mean, if you sell drugs, you know, we used to do everything by the scale, and you'd throw a nickel on your scale to make sure that it was 0.5 grams, because that's what a nickel weighs. So if you're a drug dealer, you always had a nickel on you, and then you had a digital scale, and sometimes you'd have to recalibrate it, and you did it with the nickel, because then you could weigh your drugs, and then it's worth its weight. And so some of you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I used to sell drugs, so that's the idea, though. And you would sell things according to its weight. We still use that. I mean, when you go buy meat, you pay according to its weight. If you buy gold, you pay according to its weight. We still weigh a lot of the things that we pay for, and so we still use the scales as a measurement for justice. The Bible says God doesn't need scales. That's the idea here. Because God's perfect and sees all and knows all, every call that God makes is just. There is no need for scales for him. His judgment is perfect. Verse 4, he says, the bows of the mighty are shattered, but the feeble gird on strength. The idea here is, as it goes forward in this, there's going to be an overarching theme put forth, and it's this: if we are strong, or exalted now, remain humble. Be careful and remain humble, because God can change your circumstances very quickly. And we're going to see her make these parallels. Again, this very poetic Hebrew structure. But she's going to make all these parallels in her prayer. And it's a warning to those listening on in this prayer. So it's very prophetic in its nature. But she starts off saying, the bows of the mighty are shattered, but the feeble gird on strength. Now, in the scriptures, a bow is a picture of strength. Kind of like a horn. Why? Have you ever seen the way a bow operates? When you bend it, have you ever seen, sometimes it looks like it's going to snap. It just bends it so far. Does it? If it's a well-built bow, it doesn't. It's able to withstand. It's strong enough to withstand the bending, and it operates the way it's supposed to. So the bow is a picture of strength. I love you. Yeah, I love you. Be safe. Drive safe. Yeah. The New American Standard Bible. Yeah. It's one of the best translated one of the best translations from the original texts. That's why I use that one. But the New King James is really popular too. They're very similar, but yes, I use the NASB. But the bow is a picture of strength. And so when we read verse 4, the idea is the strength of the mighty is shattered. That makes sense, right? The strength of the mighty is shattered. And look at the antithesis. But the feeble gird on strength. So she makes that parallel. The mighty are brought to nothing, and the nothing are brought to might. Circumstances change like that. And God is able to bring about those types of circumstances in a moment. Look at David, the shepherd boy. He was out in the field serving sheep, and then he's in the king's court, a part of his house. He's serving the king militarily, and then all of a sudden he's married to his daughter. He's running away from the king in the desert and in the wilderness, and then all of a sudden he's king. God brought that little boy who was from nothing and raised him up to be the greatest king Israel has ever known. To this day, if you go to Israel and ask them, who is your king? They'll still say David. Because David is the king. That's how you say David. That's the Hebrew. David. Huh? Is that how you say it in Spanish too? David? Yeah. Ah is only English. Or A is only English. David. Every other language, it's ah. So if you're ever curious about a Spanish word, it's ah, always. Or It's never a. Because you don't pronounce a. Latino. I can't think of anything else right now. So days. Huh? Allah. Allah. But only English, I believe, uses a in pronunciation like that. A. David, but it's David properly. But it's a picture of the strength being broken of the mighty or being shattered, and the feeble gird on strength. Verse 5, those who were full hire themselves out for bread. So those who were satisfied and had enough now don't have enough and have to hire themselves out in order to get sustenance. But those who are hungry cease to hunger. You get the picture here, right? How the circumstances change easily. Even the barren gives birth to 7, but she who has many children languishes. Be careful that when you're in a position of wealth, when you're in a position of prominence, that you not be overtaken by pride and arrogance, because God can take those circumstances and very quickly. And that's the point she's making. And again, mind you, Peninnah is at the forefront of her mind. Peninnah's borne plenty of children to her husband. And she's mocked Hannah, and now Hannah steps up and says, you know what? God is my salvation, and I rejoice in that salvation. And watch yourself, girl. Because now, you know what? Now I've borne a son. And we're going to see later that Hannah bears 3 more sons and 2 more daughters. Now, who do you think Elkanah is going to favor? I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying the Bible is very clear that he loved Hannah more. He told Hannah, aren't I better to you than 10 sons? And it says that he gave her more on herself in what she received when they would do the worship sacrifices than all Peninnah and her kids would get together. Like, she got a bigger portion herself. How much less are they going to get, and how much more will those kids from Hannah now get? It's kind of like the same with Jacob and Rachel, right? Who are the favored kids? Joseph and Benjamin. And again, mind you, Hannah was likely the first wife. And Peninnah was likely taken on because Hannah wasn't able to bear kids. So Peninnah's kind of like a hanger-on. She's here because I needed kids. I needed a legacy. That's kind of mean, but that's how the culture of the day used to operate. And so Hannah is telling her, watch yourself, girl. And that stands for us. Watch yourselves. Watch yourselves when you're riding high and mighty, because your circumstances can change in the blink of an eye. We're one car wreck away from meeting Jesus. We're one stroke away from death. But the stroke literally and a stroke literally, like both strokes. We're one stroke away from death. God may take you, he may not. We're one heart attack away from our lives being changed forever. I know we have this idea that we'll live forever and we'll reign and rule, and then we start to get older and we realize, well, that immortal thought, we'll live forever, just not like we think, All of a sudden, the things that used to come so easily to us come with great strides, and it's hard, and it's, man, even just waking up sometimes is like a pain in the butt. Like, oh, man, gotta get up today. I don't know, I'm scared. Hopefully I can lose weight and be full of energy again, but as long as I stick to this, man, I'm wasted on energy. That's why I drink that Red Bull. I feel a little bit better right now, but be careful. We want to be so careful when we're riding high and mighty. Verse 6, Yahweh kills and makes alive. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. That one is a little hard to accept, especially for those who have lost somebody that they love. Again, I can't help but think of my son. She says here, and she's not wrong, Yahweh kills and makes alive. The idea is God is the arbiter of life and death. Only he can give life, and he's the only one who can truly decide when it's taken. I know we think that holds in our hands, but the truth is it doesn't. I've had friends that have been shot in the head and lived. Remember, I had a friend, he got, I'm not going to get into the details, but a guy from another gang ran up and boom, while he was sitting in the car. And I saw him probably a few months later, and his skull, all on this side was gone. It was flat. You could feel his brain right under his skin. It was crazy. And I was like, you better get that covered up, dog. This is an easy kill at this point. You need to get something put there. He eventually got plates put in, but he just got a bullet to the brain. The whole took off that entire side of his skull, and I was just like, what? And he lived. He might have been a little bit different going forward in life, but he lived. He was still conscious. He was able to form sentences and think, and he wasn't that different. It might affect him to some degrees, but I was like, only God can truly take the life. It's when God says, done. That's it. That's why Jesus, I believe, on the cross, I don't think he could have died until he said, into your hands I commend my spirit, Lord. That's it. Otherwise, he'd have just hung there, I suppose, till kingdom come. He's God, and it's done when he says it's done, and that's all there is to it. Again, I can't fully understand how that goes, but God has set life in motion, and sometimes God will take a life out of, not even necessity, but out of logic. So yeah, often if you get shot in the head, yes, you die. But God still has to put that stamp of approval and say, okay, it's time to come. Because then you could end up like my friend who didn't die. Not just him, I have another friend who got shot in the head, and he lived too. It happens. I've had a lot of friends get shot and stabbed, and they live. And it happens because you don't go until God says it's time to go. I love my boy Kurt. He should have died by logic standard. But here he is, walking, talking, about to eat a Frito pie, hopefully, and, worshiping, and, about the only thing he can't do is a cartwheel. We're working on that. Maybe he, I don't think he's ever been able to do a cartwheel. Maybe back in the day. After 60, that stopped. No, but the truth is, God gives, God takes. I think of Job when his entire family is removed and he cries out. God gives and God takes away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. God is the arbiter of life and death, and only he can truly give life, and only he can truly take life. Verse 7, Yahweh makes poor and rich. He brings low and he also exalts. Now I want you to notice something. God has the ability to bring out these circumstances. Have you noticed that? Like everything we've said, these circumstances God is able to bring about in life, even life and death. To be rich or to be poor, to give and to take. God can bring about the circumstances. But one of the things that Hannah is careful not to say, or the Spirit of God through her, I would imagine, is to not reflect a bending of the human's will. Everything that has been said, God hasn't interjected his will, bending the will of humanity. What he has interjected is circumstance. Because God will not bend my will or your will. He won't. That would be counterintuitive to who God is. Because you and I have a free will. And if God were to bend our wills, that poses a massive problem on the character and nature of God. Right? Now imagine if God bent your will to make you sin. Who's then now responsible for that sin? God is. Now if God puts you in a circumstance and you fall, is God responsible for your fall? Nope, because you still have to make that choice. He may have allowed a circumstance to exist. Nothing happens without first passing through God's hand. So let's say Shorty comes up and she's looking fine. And she's like, oh, Pastor, you looking so fine today. I like you. No girls ever say that to me, but, just imagine for just a second somebody said that. I want to tickle your double chin, but just imagine for a second. That temptation first is allowed by God. Well, my God would never allow that. Yes, he would allow that. Yes, he would. Well, is the enemy a part of that? Probably the enemy's involved too, because remember when the enemy goes to console about Job? He says, Lord, I like that guy. I want to take him out. God tells him, have you considered him? I have. I would love to take him out, but you protect him. God says, well, tell me what you want to do. Well, I got these plans. Just let me do all this. He says, all right, you just can't touch him. Go ahead. My servant won't bow the knee to you. Go ahead. Now, it's a hard thing for us to accept, but that is the reality. And so let's say a young, pretty girl came and said that to me. God will have allowed that. God may have brought the circumstance. I still have to make the decision whether to say, you know what? Get your funky-looking butt out my door. I'm going to call my wife and have her bring her strap. And she'll shoot you. Because my wife's a crazy white girl. You guys don't know her that well. And that could be one of the things I do. Or I can be an idiot and be like, yeah, hey, let's go have an affair. That's on me. I can't blame God for that. Well, God, if you wouldn't have brought that circumstance, if I would have been obedient to the Lord, is the proper way to think about that. So notice, God is allowing these circumstances, but not interjecting his will on their will. And that's an important thing for us to take away, because God is sovereign and he is in control. But within the bounds of God's sovereignty, he has given us a free will, a limited will. It's not, our will isn't free the way, we like to think of freedom, unlimited. If we had unlimited will like God, we would be God. We'd be able to make things appear out of thin air. I want a chili dog. Yeah, that sounds delicious. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten yet today. I'm hungry. So, I'm looking forward to these Frito pies. But I got a watery mouth. But we don't have unlimited will. We have a limited will. We're able to operate freely within the bounds that God has set for us. And he allows that. But that's something just to notice. And in verse 8, It says he raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with nobles and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are Yahweh's, and he set the world on them. He raises the lowly and puts them in positions of prominence. I can't help but think of Esther, a lowly Jewish girl who was taken captive by the Assyrians. And when the Medes and when the Persians come in and conquered the Assyrian kingdom, and the Medes and the Persians come in, Artaxerxes takes the throne. If you ever watched 300, it's that guy. And Artaxerxes, he's the king. And one day he's all drunk in his harem, in his court, and he's just got his nobles and his guys there, and he says, I'm going to bring in my wife. I'm going to show you how sexy she is. And so he calls for Vashti, his wife. And she refuses to come. We don't know what was happening. She may have been going through a purifying ritual. She may have been on her period. There have been some speculations. Or maybe she just didn't want to come. And she didn't want to be, peacocked in front of his friends. We don't really know. I mean, we're not 100% sure. She decides she ain't going. And in a drunken fit, he banishes her out. And then, you know how it is. You sober up and you realize you're done being an idiot. He says he missed his wife. He regretted his decision. What did I do? But in the law of the Medes and the Persians, when you make a law and establish it while you hold the golden scepter, it's immovable. It cannot be revoked. Vashti is gone. That's the thing. She might as well be dead because she cannot come back. So his noblemen and his council, they come and say, hey, you know what? Let's get the best of all the land. Let's gather all the virgins and just pick one of them. And, he's got nothing better. Nothing better to do. Get him on in. And so he spends like about a year and a half. They go through their beautification process, and then they're presented to the king. One little girl stands out the most. One young girl. I'll say little, that sounds creepy. Her name was Esther. And she caught the heart of the king. And the king picks her, and she raises up to the position of queen. God took this lowly, captive Jewish girl and raised her up to be the most powerful woman in the Persian Empire. The second to the most powerful Persian. Let's be real, she's the most powerful. The king's going to do what the queen wants. And we see that he does. She's right there with him. They're one in the eyes of God. She's the most powerful person in the land, her and her husband. There's nobody else. God has the ability, it says, to exalt from the dust, the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with nobles and inherit a seat of honor. So realize, wherever you're at today, God can lift you up from that position and put you somewhere better. I'll be honest with you, I probably don't deserve to sit up here and teach you guys. I don't deserve to have a presence online. I don't deserve this. But it doesn't matter what I deserve. This is what God has blessed me with and what he has given me. So therefore, I should be faithful with it. I don't deserve a bigger building. We don't deserve a bigger building. I think, that we do, but I don't. I don't deserve a bigger crowd. I don't deserve anything. If you guys really knew who I was, you would agree with me. You guys only know a piece of me. There's a whole other side of me that you guys don't know. I have a past. I have all kinds of crap wrong with me. I'm all jacked up. I'm a mess. I really am. That's the biggie, though. And that's what makes me worthy. Not me, but it's the Lord. It's his spirit in me. It's Jesus in me that makes me worthy to be picked up and to be put here. My point was, I forgot what my point was, but God picks up and he places in positions of prominence. Same with Kurt. He doesn't deserve to sit up here and worship before us. That's a blessing that God has given him, and it's irrevocable because God gave it. He didn't do anything to earn that. I didn't do anything to earn this. God put me here, and that's all there is to it. I can disobey him and say, nah. Oh, thank God that he's good because I'm an idiot. Thank God he's who he is. But then you would be lying. but at the tail end of verse 8 here, it says, for the pillars of the earth are Yahweh's, and he set the world on them. The idea behind the pillars of the earth and God having set the world on them is that God is almighty and he holds all things together. This isn't a verse that testifies of a flat earth. That's not the idea. That you have to understand the way the ancients perceived things and how they thought. The idea is that God holds all things together. We actually have a verse like this in the Bible. If you want to, you can turn there to Colossians chapter 1. It's right after the book of Philippians. In Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 17, Paul writes this magnificent piece of scripture. And he says, he is the image, speaking of Jesus. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. Verse 17, this is the big one. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Everything is held together in Christ. Literally, you can say he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world. Because he does. And that's the idea behind this verse here. God holds all things together. God transcends us. I believe the earth is a sphere. And I have a lot of good scientific evidence for why I believe the earth is a sphere. I'll give you one of them right now. I've been across the other side of the world. And when you travel the world, you travel it based on the scale of a globe. People say, no, they don't. No, they don't. And when they have a flat map, they have to use geometry to counter. I'll give you another example. Do you guys know where Hawaii is? Because on the flat maps, it's way over there by Europe. But it's weird because, if you go to LA and you fly to Hawaii, it's like 2 hours west. How does that work unless the earth does this and it wraps around? Because it's a globe. If the earth was really flat, then the Japanese would have had to fly all the way over Europe, all the way. They would have never got, first of all, if they bombed Hawaii, it would mean nothing to us because it's all on the other side of the earth. If the earth is a globe, then Hawaii is right by California, which it is. It's how many, like 1,000 miles west of something like that. I don't know how many miles, but I know it's just west of California, and it's part of the U.S. states. Same way that Russia is just about connected to Alaska, which is right above us. But on the maps, Russia's east. Because the earth is a globe. Again, you have to use geometry. I don't want to debate anybody about it. If you believe in a flat earth, you go for it. You go be all flat-headed, and it's cool. Like, that's between you and God. I really don't care. But it's a globe. I've been around the world. Right now in Israel, it's nighttime. Do you know why? Because the sun set there, and it's still up here. And in about 6 hours, the sun is going to rise there while it sets here. Because the sun sits way over here, and the earth is spinning. And the sun's blowing light this way, and on this side of the earth, it's dark. And as the earth continues to turn, the sun appears to rise. It's just how it works. And that's why here on the polar ends, like in Alaska, because of the tilt, it's dark for like 6 or 7 months. And then as the earth continues to move and it tilts, it's light for like 6 or 7 months because of where it sits on the globe on the axis. Now, you don't have to believe it, and that's fine. And I've seen people's little projections, and they're cute, but they're unreal. I'm not going there. But you want to believe in the flat earth, it's not a salvation issue, it's fine. But the ancients used this type of terminology because of the way they thought. Now, it's logical, I get it. Like, if you look around, the earth doesn't look like a globe because it's so massive and we're so puny. I've seen this one. I saw this one. I'm just going to say it. It's a low blow, but I'm going to say it. I saw this one meme on Facebook, and it shows a picture of our galaxy, of our little solar system, and it shows all the round planets and then Earth flat. Like this is awkward is the caption. And I'm like, I just thought it was funny. I'm like, no, in everything God creates, there's imagery. I know I cracked up when I saw that. There's imagery in everything God creates. I know kind of the flat Earth people, they're kind of like, like humanism, the people that worship in humanism. You know what the purpose of humanism is? It's to say that we're the center of everything. I am God. Everything revolves around me. Jesus would say, no, nothing revolves around you. You are going to either go to heaven or hell, and you're going to be a slave to somebody, either to me or to sin. Pick one. You're a slave. And God, in everything he created, he brought forth imagery that shows who he is. Even in the atom. Have you guys ever considered the atom? When I actually read this verse, that's what I have in my mind. God holds all things together. The atom has a nucleus that's filled with positive and negative charged particles. Or it's filled with positive charged particles or negative. And then you have positive charged particles that wrap around it. The whole picture in the atom, it's mind-boggling to scientists. If you're a true scientist, it doesn't even make sense. Because the laws of nature say this atom should either collapse or explode. That's what it should do. And yet it sits so perfectly. And there's this perfect balance. And do you know what atoms make up? Everything. Everything you're touching, sitting on, every fiber of your being is created with atoms. They're atoms that are unified in a unique way that make every piece of matter that exists. The Bible says in Peter, we're going to get there soon on Sunday mornings. In 1 Peter, it says one day God's going to do this. And it says everything in the universe is going to end in fire and in intense heat. Because you know what happens when you split an atom? Boom! That's the whole purpose behind the atomic bomb, is when you mix the specific chemical, and I can't remember what it's called, it causes a nuclear reaction that causes the atoms to split, and it goes boom in a very big way. So much so that we still see the effects in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So the idea is that God has showed us things in the universe and in creation that testify of who he is. You look at the atom, positive charged particle, negative charged particle, nucleus. There's this triune nature in it. And when you look at and throughout all creation, you see a triune nature through most things. It's really interesting. But when we look at the imagery of our solar system, or any solar system, ours in particular, what would Jesus be representative of? Well, I would go ahead and say the sun, right? Because what does the sun do? Well, the sun gives life to us. I mean, we cannot exist without that sun. And everything in our solar system revolves around that sun. And it's very pictorial of who Christ is. Well, I don't believe that. That's fine. I really don't care. Like, don't believe it. Whatever. If you believe the sun is in our atmosphere, that's fine. Prove it. That's all I'll say. But I've wasted a bunch of time on that. Now, look, I'm over time. But it's all right. It wasn't your fault. But, but I get it. All the conspiracies, everything we're taught to question. There's nothing wrong with questioning. If you really, this is the last thing I'm going to say because I was driving the other day and I thought about this. I saw a chemtrail. And do you know how high airplanes fly? 30,000 feet. And they stay that height, right? Now, when you watch a chemtrail and when you see them stretch from across the sky, what does it do? It bows. Why do you suppose it bows? The plane doesn't change height. It stays at 30,000 feet. But it does this. Why? Because it's following the curvature of the earth at 30,000 feet. But it's not much of a bow because the earth is massive. The earth is bigger than flat earthers give it credit. So when you see something the size of the earth spinning 24,000 miles an hour, it's because when something is this big, 24,000 miles an hour isn't that fast. It's the same concept as if you shrunk the earth down to a molecule size. If you spun it 24,000 miles an hour, it would go faster than it would if it was a basketball. Because size matters in distance. So if you really question the earth, just go out and watch a chemtrail and it bows every single time. They bow. They're not big bows, but they bow because the earth curves. Why? Because we're a globe. But anyway, whatever. Again, wasting my time. But verse 9. He keeps the feet of his godly ones, but the wicked ones are silenced in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail. The idea here is those who are his will be protected, and those who are wicked will not. Now, it's not so to speak that in this life that they'll have full protection, which many of us do. But the idea is in the end, God will keep our feet so that we attain eternal life. That we will enter into the kingdom of God, and those who are not his, those who are wicked, will go to hell. That's the idea here. And then he says, or she says something here super interesting. For not by might shall a man prevail. And that brings to mind Zechariah chapter 4, verse 6, where Zechariah says, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says Yahweh. That's an important verse, especially for us, because that's something that I've had to learn through experience, that God is the power behind his church. We can do the ministries, we can put and implement all the things, and I've done everything that I can possibly to grow this fellowship. I really have. And then I just gave up because I'm like, dude, nothing works. It grows when God says it grows, and that's all there is. It's that simple. You can put all the methods you want down, and the truth is, it'll grow if God says it's going to grow, and that's it. And if God says it doesn't grow, you can throw as much money you want as you can do whatever you want. It's going to be just dead. The church flourishes because the Spirit of God says so, or he says no. And that's essentially, she's not saying the church here, but that's the essence behind not by might, by man shall man prevail, but it's by God's Spirit. We're able to make it through because of the Spirit of God. Verse 10, those who contend with Yahweh will be shattered. Against them he will thunder in the heavens. Yahweh will judge the ends of the earth, and he will give strength to his king and will exalt the horn of his anointed. Those who contend with God will be brought to nothing. You can't fight God. You know, poor enemy. You know, he knows he doesn't stand a chance. He knows he doesn't stand a chance. He knows his time is short. So what does he do? He goes after the object of God's love, after the objects of God's heart. It's you and I. He knows he's not going to win. He's not stupid. I mean, we can agree to disagree, but he's very smart. He's an anointed cherub. He's been in the presence of the living God. He's worshipped at the feet of Yahweh for real. Like in a way that we haven't, in a way that's he can touch if God can be touched. Yeah, I mean, I gotta find that verse. I don't know where it's at, but I've heard that a bunch of times, and I've heard there's a verse. I feel like I've seen it too, but I went back to find it once and I couldn't, but I've heard that he was a worship leader. And it's very possible. I mean, I feel like it says it in like maybe Isaiah or something, but I'll find it one of these days. But I've heard that. If you find it, show me, because I've been curious about that. I've always heard that. But the enemy is not stupid, and he knows his time is short, and he knows he's not going to win. So he attacks us because we are the object of God's desire. He loves us. He loves us so much that he died for us. He can bring with us. He knows where he's going. He wants to see how many he can. Misery loves company. Ha! But little does he know that hell's going to be, I believe, isolated. He's not. We're not going to be partying with our homies. You're going to be isolated alone with you. They've done studies, and when you actually go to there's a prison in Colorado where you're like a mile into the earth, and you're truly alone. They say that people start to go mentally ill, and it's true torture. That's one of the worst tortures you can do to a human being, is to truly isolate them. Now, I like to be alone. For a moment you do. But to truly be alone, to be isolated from humanity, you will break down at the fabric of who you are, because we weren't created to be like this. I believe that's how hell's going to be. Truly alone. But no one can stand against God. He says, Yahweh will judge the ends of the earth, and he will give strength to his king and will exalt the horn of his anointed. And that sounds very prophetic. And again, he'll exalt the strength of his anointed. Now, that could be to say King David, who's to come, or, Yeshua, the Messiah, who is to come, who is the true anointed one. And then verse 11 says, then Elkanah went to his home at Ramah, but the boy ministered to Yahweh before Eli, the priest. And so they cap it off there, and she's finished with her prayer, and they go about and they go back home. And we're going to see next week that God visits Hannah, and Hannah's going to give birth to more children. And we're also going to see that Eli, remember I told you about his sons, how they're wicked, and we're going to see what God's going to do to that entire family because of it. We're going to see a lot of that next week. But that being said, that was an incredible prayer. That was a lot. We really could have spent way more time there, but I'm at an hour and 8 minutes. Oh man, Lord, thank you for being God and for your goodness, mercy, and grace. Thank you for this time. We ask, Lord, and we pray that you would continue to just work in us, work in our hearts. Continue to fill us, Lord, fresh with you daily. Help us to see you in the words that we read as we read your word. Help us to hear you as we pray, Father. Help us to experience you as we walk this life. I thank you for those who are here, Lord, for those who are hungry for your word, for those who have joined us online. I pray that you would bless each of them. Fill them fresh with your presence and be with them. Uphold them with your righteous right hand. Cause your face to shine on them. For those who aren't here today, and I know they wanted to be, I pray that you would bless them. Bless each of us as we go off into this new week, Lord, and help us to be faithful to you. We love you and we thank you for being our God, and most of all, we thank you for loving us. Thank you for these Frito pies, Lord. May they be good and nourishing to our bodies. For sure, will they be tasty? In Jesus' name. Amen.